What's up, guys? D-Rock 1992 here. For this next video, I'm going to be talking about an actor who is probably in my top 10. You know, I would have to kind of make a top 10 list to see who I would put on it. But this guy's pretty darn close if he isn't. The guy I'm talking about is Mel Gibson. Mel Gibson's he's had a very successful career. You know, the guy's been viewed in recent years as, he's been viewed in recent years as a bad guy. Because of comments he made about Jewish people, some angry messages to, I think, his wife or something like that. Or his daughter, something like that. So he is viewed negatively now, but I feel like he's made a bit of a comeback in Hollywood, and I like to see that because it's kind of like Robert Downey Jr. when I talked about him was on the lowest of the low. I mean, he was rock bottom until he came back big time with Iron Man. Mel Gibson hasn't made that huge comeback yet, but you get the feeling he will. You get the feeling he will do that someday. But without further ado, I'm going to talk about Mel Gibson and his career. So, he started his career in Australia, actually. Australian television. Moved to Australia when he was about 12 years old. You know, he was part of an Australian film renaissance of the 1970s and 1980s. So he really started, even though he was born in America, he was a big, he started out in Australia. His first movie was a movie called Summer City. It's an Australian film. That was his first film. And he really kind of went about it for a little while until he kind of got noticed a little bit in 1979's Mad Max. A pretty good franchise, a good action film franchise. And this was an Australian film. Mad Max kind of, it got a lot of notice. Yeah, definitely, it got a lot of notice, and Mel Gibson kind of got a lot of notice on that role in particular. It's a dystopian action film. I haven't seen any of the Mad Max movies. I would definitely like to someday, for sure. 1981, he comes out with Mad Max 2. Mad Max 2, another successful movie. Another Australian film. And another big success as well. He also comes out with Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome in 1985. And there actually is going to be a new Mad Max film, but it won't have Mel Gibson as Mad Max. It'll have Tom Hardy in the title role. So, that's the Mad Max franchise, pretty much. Not a lot of movies worth mentioning, between Mad Max and the movie I'm going to talk about next. There's a few, in the 80s, he kind of got into the transition of American movies. He kind of got into American movies, he made the transition from Australian movies to American movies. And what I think is his breakout role, I absolutely think this is a breakout performance from him, 1987's Lethal Weapon. He stars as Martin Riggs. Martin Riggs. And he partners up with Roger Murtaugh, Danny Glover is in the movie. Lethal Weapon is a landmark buddy comedy film because a buddy cop comedy film, an action film. It's a landmark film because, you know, it really put that genre into popularity. The buddy cop action films. It really brought it into popularity. Lethal Weapon was a big success. The chemistry between Mel Gibson and Danny Glover in these movies is unbelievable. Unbelievable. I mean, it's some of the best chemistry I've ever seen in movies. Mel Gibson plays his part perfectly. Danny Glover plays his part perfectly. Came out in 1987 on a budget of $15 million. It brought in over $120 million. Lethal Weapon came out 84% on Rotten Tomatoes, a very good percentage. This is about how they have to stop this drug trade that is going on. Gary Busey is the villain in the film. They have to stop him. So they have to stop this big drug operation in the first film. I have a complaint about the ending. So Lethal Weapon is my least favorite film out of the whole series. There's 4 of the movies. 4 Lethal Weapon movies. And the reason why I don't particularly like the ending of the movie. Without getting too much into it, essentially the bad guy has to fight Riggs in front of a whole bunch of police officers. What is the freaking point of that? I mean, come on. I don't really want to get into the spoilers. So, I mean, this is going to be a little bit of a spoiler alert. So, if you're at this point, you know, pause it, obviously. But it is about a guy who the bad guy fights Riggs in front of police officers. That's the basic thing of it. When the police officers are surrounding the bad guy and are going to arrest him anyway. It's not that good. I don't like the ending that much. It's just... But that's really the only negative thing about the movie. I really like the movie other than that. You know, it's good. The ending, ugh. No. There's not a lot I complain about movies, but this is one of them. I mean... but anyway... there were 3 other Lethal Weapon sequels. 1989, Lethal Weapon 2 comes out. This is where they have to stop a South African drug operation by South African diplomats. Lethal Weapon 2 is my personal favorite in the series. I'll kind of say it right now, there is, this is going to be a spoiler alert, so pause this if you don't want to hear it, if you haven't watched the movie. But at the end, the head diplomatic villain is like, he shows Murtaugh his his credentials. He's like, diplomatic immunity. And Danny Glover just goes ahead, gets out his gun, shoots him in the forehead, and he's like, it's been revoked. Awesome right there. Awesome. A favorite of mine, definitely. But Lethal Weapon 2, my favorite, a big watch. And it introduces Joe Pesci as Leo Getz, which is a pretty funny, annoying type of addition to the Lethal Weapon cast. Is how I can put it. Joe Pesci is annoyingly funny. I mean, it's just a big thing for the film. And critical reception of it, 83% on Rotten Tomatoes. Then you had Lethal Weapon 3, that came out in 1992. A favorite of mine, definitely. It's where they have to stop this guns. They have to stop this illegal gun shipment. These illegal guns from getting out on the streets and getting out to troubled inner city kids. You know, that's the basic point, the basic plot of it. Mel Gibson and Danny Glover, they return. Joe Pesci, and a new character, Rene Russo, as Gibson, as Riggs' love interest. Lethal Weapon 3 in particular, it got 56%, so it definitely was lower. But I mean, it's still successful. I mean, it's still a good movie. It's successful, definitely. It's another favorite of mine. And then they concluded thus far with Lethal Weapon 4, which came out in 1998. They have to stop this Chinese drug trade. This immigration, this illegal Chinese immigration type thing. Something like that. Then you add Chris Rock to the cast. You know, you have Mel Gibson, you have Danny Glover, you have Joe Pesci, you have Rene Russo. Then you add two new people, Jet Li, Chinese actor, very popular. Is he Chinese? Yes, he is Chinese. And then you get Chris Rock. You add more comedy to the Lethal Weapon series by putting in Chris Rock. Lethal Weapon 4 in particular, it got 52% on Rotten Tomatoes. So the first two films were very successful. The last two were mixed, but I like Lethal Weapon 4 a lot. It's like I said, Lethal Weapon 2 is my favorite one in the whole series. But yeah, definitely. I like Lethal Weapon 4, but there have been rumors about a Lethal Weapon 5, but Gibson's getting up there in age, Danny Glover's up there in age, so I'm not sure if they're going to be coming out with one. But even if they don't, the Lethal Weapon series is still very popular. A very popular series. But anyway, back to the other movies that Mel Gibson has made. One that's worth mentioning, 1990, Air America comes out. If you don't know what the movie is, it wasn't a big success, but I'm just saying, I mean, it was Mel Gibson and Robert Downey Jr. So, for the casting of that movie, it was disappointing. Very disappointing. And a forgettable film for Mel Gibson. Let's see. 1993, it's kind of worth mentioning. The Man Without a Face comes out. It's worth mentioning because it's the first movie that Mel Gibson directs. He's also a successful director as well as an actor. And The Man Without a Face was his first directorial outing. 1994, he stars in a movie called Maverick. And in this movie, it's a Western comedy film. Jodie Foster and James Garner are in the film as well. One worth mentioning. I'd like to watch it someday. In 95, he comes out with his first voiceover appearance in Pocahontas, the Disney animated film Pocahontas. In the film, Mel Gibson plays John Smith. And I don't think he reprises his role in the Pocahontas sequel. No, he didn't. He did not. But Pocahontas, if you're not familiar with the story, these villagers, these Englishmen come into Native American land, Pocahontas' Native American land, and they're trying to dig for gold. They start a war between the colonists and the Indians, And I mean, this goes back to the 1600s when the colonists from England came to America to try to drive the Indians out of their land, the Native Americans, who were there first, by the way. So it's kind of a historical animated film as well as an animated film. Then, so in 1995 also, he comes out with a very popular film of his. It could be viewed as a breakout role. I think Mel Gibson's breakout role was Lethal Weapon, the first Lethal Weapon. He made Braveheart in 1995, made him a superstar beyond belief. Lethal Weapon made him a star. I think Braveheart made him a superstar. I still think Lethal Weapon was breakout, though. But Braveheart, in the movie, he plays Sir William Wallace, who was a Scottish rebel, a 13th century Scottish warrior. He and his Scottish army fought against England's army, and turns out they were not successful. I mean, they fought against England. If you've heard the story, if you've researched William Wallace, you know that he died. You know, he was drawn and quartered. That's not a pleasant thing to be part of. That's for sure. Drawn and quartered is where they used to tie you up. They used to tie you up, tie your arms. You would go. I don't really know how to describe it. They would tie your arms away from each other. They'd tie your legs away from each other. You'd have horses running in every direction. And basically, you come apart after that happened. After the horses go their separate ways. Needless to say, that was not a very good thing to have done, But it was a form of execution back in the day. And that's how William Wallace died. But it was a good movie. Braveheart's a very good movie. Mel Gibson just knocks it out of the park as William Wallace. The movie just did so well. It won the Academy Award for Best Picture and Best Director. Mel Gibson also directed the film, so he got an Academy Award for Best Picture, or Best Director, and Best Picture. So a big success for him there. He continued his success throughout, but the one I really want to mention is 2000. It's one of my... In 2000, he comes out with one of my favorite movies of all time, The Patriot. It is one of my favorites. I love this movie, even if it's mostly historically inaccurate. I love this movie. It's about the American Revolution. It's an American historical fiction war film. Mel Gibson portrays Benjamin Martin, who is based off of Daniel Morgan, Francis Marion, and others as well. And he's a guerrilla. The story basically is he doesn't want to participate in the revolution. His oldest son, played by Heath Ledger, gets into the revolution, and Mel Gibson himself, he doesn't want to participate in the revolution, but when the British come to his home and they kill one of his sons, he gets right into it. And it's just a great story. It is a great story about loss, heartbreak, and victory. The stench of losing, the stench of losing, the greatness of winning. It's just one of those films that it gets at you, definitely. And I'll tell you, Jason Isaacs, he plays the main villain in the film. Some of the things he did were just so brutal. I mean, there's a particular scene in mind where he burns a church down where there are children, women and children in this church. It's hard to look at. I mean, Mel Gibson just paints the picture so that it's hard to look at. I mean, the director actually, Roland Emmerich, he paints the picture so that it's just so hard to look at. But yeah, definitely. The brutality of the British actually wasn't that true. It wasn't really historically accurate, but, I mean, who cares? I mean, most historical films, in particular, I'm not saying who cares about the British being brutal. I mean, that's not good. That's obviously not a good thing. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that historically, it doesn't matter if it's historically inaccurate as long as they make a good movie. Because you really look at it, a lot of biopics, a lot of historical films, they're not 100% true. Hollywood will fudge things up so that they get butts in the seats. That's pretty much what it is. And even though The Patriot's not completely historically accurate, it's just a great film. I love it so much. It's a great film. Also in 2000, he has another voiceover appearance in the DreamWorks animated film Chicken Run. That I think was pretty successful. I've watched it before, and I like the movie. It's about this group of chickens who escape a farm, basically. They escape a farm. They escape from being slaughtered, basically, killed off by their farmer owners. But Chicken Run, one worth mentioning. 2002, he comes out with We Were Soldiers. This is kind of like... This, I could say, is kind of like Saving Private Ryan a little bit. It's about World War II. Or no, it's about Vietnam. It's about the Vietnam War. My mistake. But Mel Gibson is the main star. This is a very good film as well. I mean, I've watched it once. And Mel Gibson just evokes great emotion and great acting in this film as well. It's a very good film. Anyway, he comes out with this horror movie called Signs, which is directed by M. Night Shyamalan. Mel Gibson and Joaquin Phoenix are the main stars of the film. This is a science fiction thriller. One worth mentioning. 2004, he directs the highly controversial movie, The Passion of the Christ. This is the story of Jesus Christ and his crucifixion. Basically, if you're familiar with the Bible story of Jesus and his betrayal by Judas Iscariot, and then the crucifixion of Jesus by the Romans. A heavily controversial movie because of the blood, the violence. It was controversial also because of Gibson's portrayal of Jewish people, which I guess wasn't the best one in some people's eyes, But The Passion of the Christ, nonetheless, was very controversial. Very controversial film, but one that he directed, and the film itself was very successful. On a budget of $30 million, it made over $611 million. So it was a big film. But this was around the time where Mel Gibson started getting rock bottom for Mel. He was pulled over on a DWI charge. On that DWI charge, he made some negative comments about Jewish people. he had a rant about he had a rant, I think, at his wife or his girlfriend or daughter or whoever it was, that was televised, caught, I think, by TMZ or something like that. 2006, he comes out with Apocalypto. It's it was directed by Mel Gibson. Directed by Mel Gibson, produced by Mel Gibson, and written by Mel Gibson. So this was a Mel Gibson project. But yeah, 2006, he came out with this film, and this is kind of notable because he went on a little hiatus. 2007, 2008, 2009, you did not see a Mel Gibson performance at all. He comes out in 2010 with Edge of Darkness, which, first one since 2006, and it turned out to be a mixed bag for Mel Gibson himself, 58% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's a crime thriller film. The next year, he comes out with the movie called The Beaver, which is a drama film. He comes out with that with Jodie Foster, who he reunites with from the movie Maverick. Actually, it's got a good cast. Jennifer Lawrence is in the movie. Critically, a mixed bag as well. 61% on Rotten Tomatoes. In 2012, he comes out with Get the Gringo, an action thriller film. Mel Gibson, main star. But this movie was very successful. It got positive reviews instead of the two movies before that got mixed reviews. 81% on Rotten Tomatoes. I think to a lot of people it signaled a bit of a comeback for Mel Gibson, for sure. In 2013, he comes out with... He is the villain in the sequel to Machete. Machete Kills. The Machete movies are with Danny Trejo as the main character, as Machete. Mel Gibson is the main villain in the film, and he just does a great job in the film. He's just a crazy villain type character, kind of what he is portrayed as now in the media, or what he was portrayed as then. He knocks it out of the park, even though the movie didn't do very well as the first one. He knocks it out of the park as the villain. This year, 2014, he comes out with a movie. He didn't star in the movie at all. He produced the film. It was a movie called Stonehurst Asylum. And it's got a pretty good cast. Kate Beckinsale, Michael Caine, Ben Kingsley. It came out actually October 24th of this year. So it just came out. It's a thriller film and got mixed reviews. But Mel Gibson was a producer of the film. He wasn't in the film. He didn't star in the film. One that he did star in, however, was The Expendables 3. He starred as the villain of the film. I reviewed The Expendables 3 on my page, on my channel, and I really liked the movie. I think I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. One of the main reasons I liked it was because of Mel Gibson's performance as the villain. Unbelievable. A great performance. He knocked it out of the park. It was a great addition to the cast, for sure. Even though there were like 50 former action heroes in the movie, Mel Gibson was the main guy. The guy who was the best in the movie. As well as Antonio Banderas. He was pretty good in the movie, too. But that's pretty much it for right now, for his career. Television-wise in America, he was the executive producer for a show called, The Three Stooges in 2000, a television film. Actually, he came about that because he was a longtime Three Stooges fan. So he executive produced a TV film called The Three Stooges. The only thing worth mentioning, really. As far as movies coming up, he has nothing in television coming up. As far as movies coming up, however, he's going next year. He is slated to be He is slated to be the main star in an upcoming American-French action thriller film, starring him and American actor William H. Macy. It is scheduled for 2015 release. The plot says, a celebration at a musical theater society hosted by an American ex-con goes terribly wrong when drug dealers plan to kill his daughter. To me, the plot kind of sounds like a Taken type plot. You know, that type of plot. And it seems to me Mel Gibson's kind of going that route, you know, going that older action hero type route, like Liam Neeson's doing right now and is very successful at, like Denzel Washington's doing right now, and he's very successful at it too. But yeah, that's the big movie. That's the only big thing that's coming out with Mel Gibson. I mean, there's rumors about Lethal Weapon 5, but nothing's really materialized of yet. And that is pretty much it for Mel Gibson and his on him. So that's it for this video. D-Rock 1992 out.